Hi everyone, I hope everybody can hear me. My name is Ryan Fitzpatrick. I am a physical therapist and clinic manager over at the Wilmington, North Carolina location. Today, what I want to do is dive into a discussion regarding types of exercise. And now I see people joining now. I just want to make sure if someone could shoot me a comment and let me know if they can hear me, okay? Okay. Okay, it looks like I think people can hear me, so I'll continue. Again, my name is Ryan Fitzpatrick. I am the clinic manager and a physical therapist at CORA in Wilmington, North Carolina. And today I'm going to be discussing some common terms related to exercise and physical activity, and more importantly, why intention as far as exercise goes is key to staying disciplined, especially during this time when many of us may have had to stay home. Maybe we lost some motivation. So at the very least, I hope to provide some education as far as some specific terms go, and also help people to think about their why of why they might be doing something to help boost some exercise here as we move forward during this time. So I just want to start with deciphering between physical activity and exercise. So physical activity is defined as any movement of skeletal muscles that requires energy. But when we talk about exercise, that tends to be more specific. So, any movement could be physical activity, but when we talk about exercise, it tends to be specific, intentional, and directed in a way that brings us to usually a particular goal that we might have. So to break this down further, as far as exercise goes, there can be exercise for a vague goal. That might be for you losing weight or getting in shape. Kind of vague terms that are used to describe those types of things. And you may be running to do that. You may be performing body weight exercises. You may be using free weights or bands, things like that. And then even more specifically, I'm going to bring up the term known as training. So when we discuss training, that's usually when an individual, whether you know it or not, is using a periodized program or schedule where we are overloading the system, each week or every couple weeks, so that we're not doing the same thing over and over again. We're trying to create a training adaptation, whether that for that specific person, maybe they want to increase their strength, maybe they're looking to increase their muscular power, or maybe you're preparing for an event, a 5K race, a 10K race, a weightlifting competition. For me personally, I'm a competitive CrossFit athlete, so I'm on a regimented, periodized training program where I'm working on my weaknesses. I'm building each week based on percentages of my 1 rep max. Everything is very thought out as far as what I'm doing, how I'm changing my load, my intensity, and why I'm doing that. So as far as training goes in regards to the difference between practicing and competing, that is something I also want to touch on. I work with several active individuals as a physical therapist, ranging all ages, from someone who's just doing something personally for their own goals to people who are in college athletics and that kind of thing. So it's very important to be able to decipher between practicing and competing. And so I want to break down basically by definition, the major differences between those two things. When someone is practicing, they're detaching from results. You have to have the ability to step away from results, to be able to stop comparing your own self to whatever your best may have been or may be at the time, or to the people around you, because it can be very easy to get lost in trying to compete with those people or compete with yourself, and that's not there's an appropriate time to compete, but you have to step back and go back to practicing, which is where you get back to the fundamentals of movement. Learning to move well before we move often, or before we load up a movement, for example, or decide to go all out in an effort before you're ready. So again, to review, we have physical activity, which is kind of that umbrella term that covers any movement that requires energy. And then we kind of bracket that down into exercise, which starts to become more of an intentional movement. You know, people are doing things to lose weight, to get in shape. Maybe you're doing it to improve sleep quality, or to just, you want to stay healthy, you want to reduce your risk for chronic disease. It can be all sorts of a range of things, and I just want to challenge everybody watching to kind of think about why they're doing what they're doing. You know, whether you're new to exercising, or whether you've taken a break during this the COVID closings and stay-at-home orders, and you're looking to get back into things. And then, like I said, beyond exercise, now we have training, to where we get even more specific. We're looking at periodized programming. We're looking at concepts like progressive overload, meaning that we're challenging muscles and body systems sufficiently without overdoing it, through a training program that's varied, weekly, or maybe you're doing it to peak for a certain event, like I discussed before, where you're building up over a period of maybe 4 to 8 weeks and increasing your strength training, your load, your intensity, things like that. What I want to get into next is kind of touch on what I see in physical therapy practice, and how certain athletes, like I said, all age levels, all different competitive levels, are coming in maybe with pain or injury from exercise. Some of the most common things I see are someone is increasing training volume too much too soon. You know, a lot of times we think, oh, I used to be able to do this, so I can jump right back in and start, running 10 miles a day, or I used to be able to back squat 300 pounds, so I'm going to jump right in and try to go to that on my first week back. And that oftentimes can lead to injury, because your nervous system is not quite prepared to take on that amount of load or resistance or intensity. Or maybe you are lacking the adequate mobility of your joints, the flexibility of your soft tissues, or the motor control of a movement pattern before you load up. Yeah, that's you, Jeff. All right. So what I'm looking to describe here is a couple of ways that not only just as a physical therapist providing advice, but also a fitness enthusiast myself, I really like to take a step back and look into where I'm at currently, and to assess maybe, number one, what is my goal? Why am I exercising? What am I trying to get to? You could have a vague goal, something of losing weight, but I would urge everybody to create more specific goals, SMART goals, as we often term those, to be more specific and measurable, as well as realistic. So that way you have a way of tracking your progress over time, and you're not just kind of guessing along the way. And also, it can be very rewarding too to see your steps and your progress each week too, when you become more specific with that. Another reason I commonly see people coming in with injury is because they have the mentality of no pain, no gain, which to a certain extent, yes, exercise is sometimes painful, but it shouldn't be painful to the point where it's beyond mental discomfort or muscles burning and working, that kind of sensation. It shouldn't be a pain that is indicative of injury. And you shouldn't be trying to push through that if you are experiencing that kind of pain. And I think this all starts with education and understanding. So if you're new to exercise, or you're not aware of it, you may not know what to expect as far as delayed onset muscle soreness, or what it feels like to have lactic acid build up in your muscles after a high intensity workout. So part of that is maybe taking a step back, doing some research to see, is this what I should be experiencing, and that kind of thing. And a question just popped up. Rob Seahorn, how do you manage patients that don't want to take off from the provocative activity? Okay, yeah, that's a really good question. So especially with patients who have a strong passion for whatever they're doing, you know, whether it's running or whether they're preparing for a competition and they don't want to just completely give up on it. More and more bodies of research are now showing that taking complete rest is probably not the best option. And for those people who want to keep performing their activity, I would recommend, especially if they're in pain, coming in to see a doctor of physical therapy to perform that detailed movement assessment. Because without that education and without knowing exactly maybe where the source of your discomfort is coming from, it may just be a lingering issue that keeps going on and on, where you feel a little bit better, but then it comes back. And we want to get to the source of that. So when I have patients come in who, you know, they want to stay active, I completely relate to that. I love being active. I have not only a passion for staying healthy and fit, but also competing. So, but part of that is modifying your activity. It doesn't mean you don't do anything, but there are several ways we can modify movement patterns to improve movement quality, to address deficits in mobility, flexibility, stability, and to work on areas of your game that might need improvement while also keeping you active. And you know, if someone has questions about that, you know, beyond this video, obviously feel free to email, text me, call the clinic, or call your, you know, a physical therapist that you know, and just have a discussion with them about that. It won't hurt just to get some education and have them hear you out, to maybe perform even just a free movement assessment, to come in and just, let's just get a baseline, see where you're at, and see what areas we can improve upon. So I hope that helps answer that question. And then, so I wanted to jump into, with the time we have, to looking at some of that tips and advice I would give as a physical therapist to help not only reduce injury risk in exercise, but also improve performance. Like I said, a lot of people are competing maybe with their best version to create the best version of themselves. Maybe some people are competing against others. You know, whatever that why is for you, what you're doing, there's always a way that you can reduce injury risk and optimize your performance. And I think that really starts with, like I said, educating yourself, whether that's doing some research or, you know, going to a physical therapist and just asking questions that you have, and trying to gain a better understanding of that you're different from the next person. And you go into a gym, it's easy to compare yourselves to others, but you need to be able to detach from results and look at what you specifically need to work on, whether that's, like I said, mobility, flexibility, stability, improving movement patterns before you load up a movement. And a lot of times that does take going to someone who has knowledge and expertise in that area to figure that out. And there's no harm in going in and talking to somebody about that. And so recovery is another topic I wanted to hit on that is huge as far as exercise goes. So number one, sleep is huge. Patterns, your sleep patterns, when you're going to sleep, how long you're sleeping, what you're doing before bed, that kind of thing. And that can just start with just keeping a log, a journal, something to just look at on average, maybe how long you're sleeping, when you're going to bed. Because if you're not aware of it, you don't really know. And that might increase your energy levels. It may improve performance if you're a little bit more aware of your time management and your sleep patterns. The second major component to this would be nutrition. And you know, nutrition is huge. There's lots of diets these days and things like that, but just some basic advice as far as this goes. And you know, I'm not a dietitian or a nutritionist, but just taking a step back, tracking what you're taking into your body. Again, usually that involves downloading an app. I use MyFitnessPal, it's free, or just writing down in a journal what you're taking into your body throughout the day, at what times of the day, and looking a little bit more closely into the quality of foods you're taking in addition to the quantity. Because if you're extremely active and you're not fueling your body enough, you're gonna feel drained out and put yourself at risk for overtraining, higher risk for injury, and you're not going to recover as well to be able to continue training throughout the week. or continue exercising throughout the week. So the next thing would be to utilize recovery techniques on a daily basis, whether that is something as simple as maybe foam rolling for a couple minutes on some tight muscles, or using a lacrosse ball on those tight muscles. Taking time daily to work on mobility and flexibility. A lot of times we want to be really strong, but we don't want to take the time to work on those weakness areas where it would really improve your game if you stay consistent with something like flexibility, mobility work every single day. And it's easy to kind of just brush off and say you're not going to do it, but if you really just set an alarm, set 10 to 20 minutes a day to work on those things, it's really going to pay off in the long run as far as reducing injury risk and improving performance. A couple other tips would be to realize that more is not always better, and that you have to assess daily, especially if you're an athlete or competing, to see where you stand physically, mentally, and emotionally each day. We're all dealing with different stressors in our life, and we need to be aware of those stressors and how they're impacting our recovery, how they're impacting our energy levels, and to adjust appropriately on those days. So whether that is, for example, say you had something went on, you had a stressful day the day before, you were really busy, you wake up the next morning feeling a little bit tired, you didn't have great sleep, your nutrition wasn't on point the day before, so I would adjust my exercise that day so that I don't overdo it. Maybe take that day to do an active recovery workout where I'm going at a lower intensity, I'm not spending quite as long working out, I'm giving my body optimal time to recover, and maybe that just means you take a complete rest day that day. Even if you really wanted to get something high intensity in, take it down a notch, listen to your body. There's a time to go all out, and that usually comes for people when they're competing or in that type of situation, but you have to be able to adjust on a daily basis to promote long-term improvements and success as far as your exercise outcomes go. The last point I wanted to make is prioritizing quality of movement. So everybody wants to be able to, move a lot of weight. They want to be able to squat a lot or deadlift a lot or run their fastest, 5K or run their fastest half marathon or marathon. But we need to look at how we're moving, and I would always emphasize, as a physical therapist, I'm a little bit biased, but moving well before you move often or load up on weight. And again, this all goes back to assessing your movement patterns and maybe talking to somebody who has knowledge in that aspect and has a lot of education in terms of anatomy, physiology, and movement patterns of the body, and how we can optimize maybe what you're deficient in, or maybe what a lot of times we demonstrate asymmetries as far as movement patterns go. So we want to look at right to left, and are we training appropriately for what we're preparing for, and are we training our weaknesses? And so with that said, I know we're a little short on time. I had to jump on my phone today because I couldn't get my audio or camera to work on my computer. But I just wanted to recommend, I use, if you can see this here, I have what's called a Whoop strap. And this is something that I use to track my daily recovery as an athlete. And what this strap does is it tracks my resting heart rate, it tracks my maximal heart rate, it tracks my sleep patterns in terms of my light sleep, my deep sleep, and my REM sleep patterns, which is really cool to see that data breakdown and analyze those metrics. And it also tracks my strain throughout the day. So it uses a number scale connected to an app on my phone where I can track, how much I'm exerting myself. And each day when I wake up, my level is either in red, yellow, or green, meaning it's recommending that maybe I take it easy today because my recovery wasn't very optimal, my strain levels are high. Or if I'm green that day, it's saying, your body is probably more equipped to take on a higher strain at this point in time. And so, that's basically what I wanted to talk about today. It was more of an educational session on thinking about terms that we kind of throw around: physical activity, exercise, training, and then more specifically practicing versus competing. And really, I just wanted everybody to kind of take a look back into why you're doing what you're doing to help set goals moving forward, especially during this kind of unprecedented time where we're all maybe struggling to stay as active as we want to be with gyms closed in a lot of areas. So, home workouts and moving forward safely with that to reach your goals. So I'll open up to if any other questions that anybody has, they can ask those now if they have time. And I will mention I will be on Facebook Live Monday next week, and I'll be doing a little bit more of an interactive session providing tips for squat performance. So I'll actually be running through some self-movement screening techniques that you can do right at home to see where you may be showing deficits or asymmetries in mobility, flexibility, and things like stability and motor control. Does anybody have any more questions for me? And I see some comments here. Proper form and technique is huge, and I would completely agree with that. Everybody's a little bit different, so I wouldn't say there's a one-size-fits-all for everybody. However, there's ways to optimize your body mechanics based on your lever arms and based on ways to better activate certain muscle groups in different positions. So yes, technique is huge to not only improving your performance but reducing your injury risk. All right, I'll give it another 30 seconds or so to see if anybody has any other questions they think of. And as always, this is just a short little Facebook Live, so if anybody has any questions that pop up once they get off of here, feel free to you can shoot me an email or respond on Facebook. But my email is rfitzpatrick@corahealth.com. All right. Well, if there's no questions at this point, we'll wrap that up for today. I hope everybody has a nice afternoon. Like I said, if any other questions come up, feel free to reach out. I look forward to jumping on here again on Monday next week. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining in.